In 1942, in a city under occupation, a young man sat at his desk and wrote the most dangerous sentence in philosophy. There is only one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. He was 28 years old. His lungs were slowly destroying themselves. The world outside his window was a continent on fire, and he had reached the conclusion, after years of honest, unprotected looking, that human life has no inherent meaning, no hidden purpose, no divine architecture behind the suffering, no answer waiting at the end of the search. The universe, he had decided, owes us nothing. And then, he chose to live anyway. Not because he found a reason, not because he revised his conclusion, but because he understood something most of us spend our entire lives trying to avoid. That a man can face the silence completely and still answer it. That there's a way to live without flinching, without lying, and without giving up. His name was Albert Camus, and what he built on top of that silence has lasted longer than almost anything else his century produced. You cannot understand Camus from a safe distance. You have to begin where he began. Not in the universities, not among the intellectuals arguing over ideas in the left bank cafes. In Algiers, in a 2-room apartment without electricity, a mother who moved through the room like a ghost, deaf from birth, worn down by life she hadn't chosen into a kind of permanent, wordless bewilderment. A father already dead, killed in a war before Camus could walk. A grandmother who believed hardship was instruction and administered it without mercy. And yet, the sea. Every morning, the Mediterranean, light so ferocious, it felt like a physical force, salt and hot stone, and the wild smell of jasmine in the evenings. Boys playing football in the streets with nothing, and somehow unaware this was supposed to be poverty. He swam. He sat in the early hours watching the sun pour itself out over the water with a generosity that felt almost like cruelty, because it was so beautiful and it meant so little, and it kept coming anyway. This was the contradiction he would spend his entire life turning over in his hands. How can the world be this alive and answer none of our questions? He was 17 when the doctor told him, tuberculosis, one lung almost gone. For a boy who lived through his body, through the raw pleasure of being physical and young and fast, this was not merely a diagnosis. It was the world showing him something it usually keeps hidden. There's a wall, he would later write, that most people never see, not because it isn't there, but because staying busy is a remarkable effective way to keep it out of sight. Plans, routines, noise, the forward motion of ordinary life, all of it functions as a kind of managed blindness. We keep moving because stopping means looking, and looking means seeing, at the edge of everything, the indifference. When you are truly sick, the wall becomes visible. The sun rises on the day you die the same way it rose on the day you were born. The world continues. The birds continue. The sea continues. None of it adjusts for your absence. The universe is not cruel. Cruelty would at least imply attention. It is simply elsewhere. He called this feeling the absurd, not a doctrine, not a position to be argued in a seminar room. A feeling, the feeling of human being who needs meaning, who asks the world why, and hears only silence in return. He believed everyone encounters this wall eventually. He believed most people spend their lives deciding not to look at it. He looked. He kept looking. he refused to stop. Most people, when the silence becomes undeniable, choose one of two escapes. They leap. They find something large enough to fill it, a religion, a revolution, a story about history moving toward justice, God, the nation, progress, something with a capital letter that promises arrival. Camus called this philosophical suicide, not the ending of a life, but the ending of honesty. You haven't answered the absurd, you have simply decided to stop looking at it. Or they collapse. If nothing means anything, then nothing means anything, and they surrender, cynicism, withdrawal, the slow numbing of a life that has stopped trying. Camus refused both. Not because he was optimistic, not because he found a hidden answer, but because both escapes required the same betrayal, looking away. And he had decided, somewhere in the years of illness and poverty and unprotected thinking, that looking away was the one thing he would not do. Can a man live without illusion, without appeal, without hope of rescue, and still find something worth building? This was his question. He spent his entire life answering it. He found his answer in a myth older than philosophy, Sisyphus, the king condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a mountain for eternity. Every time he reaches the summit, the boulder rolls back. He descends. He finds it at the bottom. He begins again. Labor stripped of all destination. The gods designed this as the perfect punishment. Effort without arrival. Hope permanently revoked. But Camus looked at this image and saw something the gods had failed to account for. Between the moment the boulder falls and the moment Sisyphus reaches it again, there's a pause, a brief, lucid interval at the bottom of the mountain. In that pause, Sisyphus sees his situation completely. He is under no illusion. He knows there is no summit he will be allowed to keep, no reward, no end. And he picks it up anyway. Not because he has no choice, because the boulder is his, the mountain is his, the gods designed the punishment. But how he carries it belongs to no one else. In that small distinction, Camus found the entire argument that a human being who faces the truth of his situation with open eyes and continues without flinching has reclaimed something the universe cannot touch. Not meaning handed down from above, meaning generated from inside, from the act of continuing itself. The struggle toward the heights, he wrote, is enough to fill a man's heart. He meant it. When the Germans occupied France, he stayed, tuberculosis, exemption papers and all, and edited an underground newspaper that people were shot for carrying. When Sartre argued that the present suffering could be excused for a better future, Camus refused. The man in front of you is real, he said. The future is a story. A man who believed in nothing transcendent, lived as though everything was worth fighting for. On January 4th, 1960, Albert Camus was killed in a car accident on a road outside Sens. He was 46 years old. In his coat pocket, an unused train ticket. He had changed his plans at the last minute. In his briefcase, recovered from the field beside the wreckage, an unfinished manuscript, a novel about a man searching for his father, about everything he had never quite managed to say. The absurd had the last word, as it always does. But this was what I keep returning to. Camus never found a comfortable answer. He never stopped seeing the wall. And out of that, out of the wound, the illness, the daily refusal to look away, he built something true enough to outlast him by decades. Not life has meaning, but I will live as though it does, without rescue, without illusion, with my eyes open and my hands working. That is not an easy way to live, but it may be the only honest one. We must imagine Sisyphus happy.
A little black notebook and a life cut clean at the edge. He wrote of suns on empty walls, of hunger, ash and stone. Then the world turned him back to dust and left his thought alone. No trumpet sound.